Hey everyone, this is CorpsmanJ with CorpsmanJ Reacts, and today we're trying a new military history video. Never seen this channel before. It was recommended in my comments at one point, so we're going to try it. The name of the creator is Tactically Acquired, and the video is called War Chariots, Vietnam Gun Trucks. So I haven't seen it before. Let's find out more about that and see what he has to say. So without further ado, let's get into it.
This is hands down the video I've wanted to make the most and the one I'm most terrified to screw up. No, not today. I'm still not ready. Just do it! Oh, damn it, Shia. Don't you know how to knock? Fine. Vietnam gun trucks. Take one.
I do like that. Good bit of little humor in there. That's good.
So on today's episode of F Around and Find Out, we get to see what happens when truck drivers lack adult supervision.
Whoop, whoop. Here I come. Oh, here I come.
For the first time in U.S. military history, truck drivers, not frontline troops, but truck drivers, are now the primary target. Almost overnight, convoys went from high-speed highways to burnt-out parking lots, and these drivers pretty much immediately snapped and went full-on Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, what a day. What a lovely day.
Well, actually, I guess that would make this Mad Max Supply Road. Anyway, these guys weren't f***ing around with just adding a few extra guns to their trucks. No, sir, they stole steel from airfields, they ripped armor off of APCs, sometimes they would steal the entire APC, and some of them even filled out the proper paperwork for a couple of five-finger discount 50s. By the time they were done turning the NVA's nice things into the sum of their parts, they would not...
I like that. Just like Nick with Fat Electrician would say, strategically transfer equipment to an alternate location.
Not only rewrite the entire book on convoy operations, but they would quite literally influence an entire generation on the convoy lessons that the U.S. Army forgot to write down. Again. And we're going to get into all that and more right after a word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by TangoAlpha.store. Now I know what you're thinking. Can a YouTuber sponsor his own video with his own merch? I don't know, but we're gonna find out.
You gonna learn today.
So check us out at TangoAlpha.store. We are always rolling out some sweet new designs. Now let's get back to the video. Alright, so before the US Army went from supply trucks to zero f***s, we first need some backstory. The US Army's been running supply convoys since forever, and for whatever reason, we keep having to relearn the same lesson over and over and over again. Which is if your supply line gets wrecked, so does your combat power. It's like US Army leadership has seasonal, decades-long amnesia or something, and by the time Vietnam rolls around, this set-it-and-forget-it approach to logistics has gotten all kinds of personal. War has been simmering in Vietnam since the 50s, and by 65, the US Army has jumped in hard, with most notably its biggest game-changing advantage being air cavalry. With a helicopter, you can move men in fast, you can appear out of nowhere, hit hard, and bounce before the enemy even knows what happened. On paper, aircav looks like the final boss, but problem though, last I checked, aircav can't run on undiluted caffeine, nicotine, and freedom. It has to run on food, fuel, and ammo. So what do all these things have in common? How about the fact that every single one of those things shows up in Vietnam in the same way? On the back of a truck. The point I'm getting at here is that on paper, aircav looks completely unstoppable. But in reality, it was nothing more than a bunch of unarmored trucks dragging gas and
Big old convoys used to do that in Iraq.
hauling ass through a mountain pass. So the enemy adapts and they begin attacking these supply convoys instead. Which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because why waste the effort of trying to shoot down the bird when you can just kill what feeds it? Well, naturally, this means that truckers are going to have to defend themselves, but in reality, all they had to work with was a whole bunch of rifles and not nearly enough belt-fed problem solvers. Now, to be fair, they did have MPs whose job it was to protect these convoys, but again, the reality of the situation is that there were never enough of them, and escort duty wasn't exactly a glamorous job. And so that's the world that they're living in heading into 1967. You've got convoys moving the lifeblood of the war, you've got an enemy that has a new plan of attack, and you've got drivers who, through no fault of their own, are about to discover that Vietnam doesn't give a damn about what your regulation says. And that brings us neatly along to September 2nd, 1967. A convoy...
I'm going to go back a little bit, but Most war doesn't care what you do or say or how the generals and admirals plan it. Just saying.
90 trucks from the 54th and 20th this neatly along to that Vietnam doesn't give a damn about what your regulation says. And that brings us neatly along to September 2nd, 1967. A convoy of 90 trucks from the 54th and 27th Transportation Battalion are heading down one of their main supply routes named QL-19. And almost immediately there's a lot to nitpick here because these guys were pretty much set up for failure right from the jump. Most of the trucks have only one driver, one weapon, and only a handful of mags for security. Their day-to-day routine forces them to clear a checkpoint at a specific time, which means that every single afternoon it turns into something that looks more like a scheduled sprint more than a deliberate movement. And as if that weren't bad enough, during the movement itself, one of their 5,000-gallon tankers had an issue which created a 500-meter gap between itself and the lead 29 vehicle. Which begs the question, why didn't someone get on the radio and tell everyone to tighten this formation up? Well, it's probably because the convoy commander, you know, the man who was supposed to be leading this entire convoy, well, he can't see shit because he's riding in the very last vehicle.
Of course, he's in the back. He would definitely be in the rear, which is not smart. Not smart at all.
I can't see fucking shit out of this thing.
Now, while all of this is happening, the convoy has no idea that they're driving straight towards an MVA force of about 80 soldiers. They're in about 50 dug-in camouflage positions, and they've been up in those hills studying this stretch of road almost a mile long for days at this point. As the convoy starts snaking through the curves, the trap gets sprung. The lead gun jeep takes a direct hit with a recoilless rifle, and things only go downhill from here. Almost at the same time, a tanker gets disabled, cutting off the front part of the convoy, then mines hit other trucks, and then they spring a second ambush that knocks out another tanker. And it is just pure chaos at this point. All of this happens so fast and with so little communication that most of the drivers, they didn't even realize that they were even in a full-on ambush. Hell, most of them don't even know what the SOP is for an ambush, and the ones that do, well, they follow the old Korean-era guidance of stop, dismount, and fight on foot. And this is exactly what the MVA were counting on. Now you've got trucks sitting out in the open, you got men.
Reminds me of the old adage, the current generation fights like the previous generation when it comes to war. You get your lessons from the previous war or conflicts, and then you apply them to the new conflict or war, and most of the time that's when you learn that's not going to work. And you learn after you lose a bunch of lives.
Getting lit up like fish in a barrel, and to make it worse, some of these drivers have next to no ammo and some have no weapons at all. But fortunately, an absolute legend named Sergeant Buford Cox takes control of the situation. He tells everyone to get... Hey, you finished or are you done? Let's try that again.
Of course, animals always do that in these videos. I try not to have them in when I'm recording, but maybe one day.
What you doing on that scratching phone? But fortunately, an absolute legend named Sergeant Buford Cox takes control of the situation. He tells everyone to get back in their trucks and has them drive through the ambush while the MPs show up later to lay down suppressive fire. The whole thing lasts only about 10 minutes, and in that time, the MVA destroys or damages 30 vehicles, they kill 7 soldiers, and wound 17. For the MVA, this is a massive win. They've exposed the weakness in the air cav machine. But for the soldiers of the 8th Transportation Group, this is a wake-up call for them. They're not rearing the gear anymore. They're frontline soldiers now, and they've got to figure out how to fight like it, and they've got to do it fast. After combing through their SOPs and realizing that complacency is what got them here, it was time to throw out the book and write a new one. Because honestly, their options were pretty simple at this point. They would either have to adapt or die. So after the QL-19 ambushed, 8th Transportation Group is pretty shaken up, but fortunately, they've got an absolute gangster hiding in plain sight, which is their acting group commander, Lieutenant Colonel John Burke. And yeah, you know what? If I've said it once, I'll keep saying it. If you want to find a dangerous man who can absolutely get shit done, just go out and look for a man named John.
Under the table is where shit gets done. You pissed, John? Are you? Yeah.
Anyway, Colonel John Byrd knows exactly what's up. He knows that on paper, route security is the job of the infantry and MPs, but in reality, there is no way in hell that he can count on that. So instead, he takes a page from the old Art of War that says, quote, "The best defense is more offense, so off to work they go."
What is it?
Flatten the mountain, look.
The first real test of these changes came on November 11th, 1967 with the 585th Transportation Company. This time, the convoy was running a new SOP to include for every 10
Nice, right on
transport
Veterans
trucks,
Day.
there was one gun truck, and each of those trucks will have a minimum of 2 M60s, with the preferred configuration being an additional 50 cal, or even more preferred, a quad 50. The convoy is operating in checkpoint 89, which is in pretty much the
What's always better? Guns. Lots of guns.
same area as the September 2nd ambush, so the enemy tries the same thing all over again. A small force of about 15 fighters springs the trap, but this time, however, things go very different. The mines don't stop the vehicles, and per the SOP, a call goes over the radio yelling, "Contact, contact, contact!" Pretty much immediately, gunship QRF is already spinning up, the drivers push straight through the kill zone, and they all rally at checkpoint 89. The whole thing lasts about 30 seconds with no trucks disabled and nobody seriously injured. And this is a big deal because for the first time, the transport guys get proof that their new drive-through doctrine actually works. And then, less than 2 weeks later, they get an even bigger test. On November 24th, 1967, the 666 Transportation Company is running a 59 truck convoy complete with 6 gun trucks and 3 gun jeeps. As they're moving along QL19, the lead gun truck spots 10 paper bags spaced across the road. Now these guys realize that these are fertilizer mines, so the driver guns it through what's obviously their kill zone, and then he immediately catches a rocket that blows part of his front wheel off. Now, per the SOP, anything still in the kill zone is supposed to keep moving, but the road doesn't care about your SOPs. The next truck tries to get around the disabled gun truck and then runs directly over those mines. And this turns into an insane chain reaction with trucks swerving, trucks burning, ammo pallets cooking off, and even a 5,000-gallon fuel tanker gets hit, sending burning fuel nearly 1,000 yards down the road. And as if this wasn't bad enough already, the MVA sappers start doing the most disrespectful thing possible, and they begin jumping onto the disabled vehicles and then begin placing demo charges. But the gun truck crews weren't about to take this disrespect lightly, so they start putting an absolute hurting on those sappers. Eventually, a tank and 2 APCs from the 4th ID show up, and they lay down a continuous 20-minute ass whooping, and then the gunships and jets roll in to finish off the party. One of those APC crews damn near fires their entire load of around 30,000 rounds before this battle is over. When the smoke clears, the final tally is 41 enemy dead and 4 captured, with American casualties being 20 plus trucks destroyed or damaged, 4 gun trucks damaged, 16 wounded, and only 3 killed. And look, I know I only said 3 killed, don't misunderstand me, losing even 1 soldier, that is never okay. But compared to September 2nd, these guys are on the same road in the same kind of ambush country not even 3 months later. This is a drastic improvement. These guys have proven that the SOPs and equipment that these dudes basically wrote, built, and tested themselves actually work. And I'm not the only one who thought so. General Creighton Abrams, who saw part of the battle, praised the transportation soldiers and the way that they fought when he said, quote, "Those guys look like a bunch of frustrated tankers."
Best job ever.
Best job ever. Best job ever. Best job ever.
And guys, this was just the start of it, because while the gun trucks had proven their worth, this battle had proved something else as well. Gun trucks weren't the magic shield that they were hoping for. The MVA were adapting fast, convoy ambushes were becoming a weekly event, and it was time for the truckers to take this concept from, well, let's just see what happens, to going all in on,
whoever comes, whoever it is, I'll kill them. I'll kill them all. Of course you will.
Obviously, he is a John Wick fan, and it's just perfect for the video. Mad Max Supply
the gun truck
Road.
design was about as Wild West as you could get. Right from the start, transportation units were up against it because per the Army standard, they were not authorized to have combat vehicles. It's not like they could just go out and get their hands on more machine guns and heavy weapons because they were controlled by the Army standard. And furthermore, their higher command didn't want them modifying their trucks because they were worried about them damaging the suspension and drivetrain.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
But hey, what's a few busted leaf
Quite
springs when
that.
it comes to saving lives, am I right? So official authorization be damned, boys. Let's break out the torches.
Oh, say less.
At first, the designs were basic, nothing more than some wooden boxes and sandbags. Which sounds fine in theory, but then you remember that sand is heavy as hell, and when it rains, well, it gets even heavier. And since Vietnam rains like it's getting paid by the hour, what they needed instead was good old American steel. But there was no way in hell that they were gonna find that in the middle of this Vietnamese jungle.
Well, it's gonna be tough for him to get out of that situation. Actually, it's gonna be super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Oh, really?
So yeah, weirdly enough, they found a bunch of it just floating out in the water next to a Navy pier project. It was like the universe itself was
Just happened to be there. It happens. Most of the time. Let's continue.
going, oh, you want to build death wagons? Cool, here's some starter armor. Don't stay up too late, kids. Now pretty soon they ran into their next problem, which is that their M35 2.5 ton trucks that they were using, they were not cutting it. But then they remembered the most American of solutions, which is if it's not working, well, just make it bigger. So with that, they stepped up to the beefier M54 5-ton truck. Now this bigger truck meant bigger armored boxes could go on the back. And furthermore, these box designs got so modular that if a truck got blown up, well, they could literally just unbolt the whole box and slap it onto another truck overnight. Which has got to be insane from the NBA perspective. Like, it's a Monday morning, they're just checking in for work, you know, setting up an ambush, blowing up a truck or two, you know, no big deal. And then the next day they go to the exact same spot and they're just looking through their binos like...
Deja vu.
Anyway, by the summer of 1968, the first of these 5-ton second-generation trucks rolled off the dirt floor assembly line, including arguably the most famous one of them all, Eve of Destruction. And guys, I cannot stress enough how insane
That is a good name of a truck. That is a really good name of a truck.
in this period of the gun truck life cycle was. There was absolutely nothing left off the table. This was literally the Mad Max garage montage phase. One of their stranger configurations included putting a stripped out APC shell onto the flatbed, and essentially they created some kind of pseudo truck tank like thing. Cool idea in theory until you realize that physics has a say in your top heavy design, so back to the drawing board they went. Most of the crews, however, ended up settling into what became the classic gun box configuration. This was basically a double-layered steel wall box around the bed, and then they would fill the gap in with anything they could find. And guys, when I say anything, I mean anything. Sandbags, wood, scrap rubber, ammo cans, old tires, even mattresses. The point is that if it stopped shrapnel or even made shrapnel think twice about coming through, it was going in that wall. Now, one of the critical lessons that they figured out early on was that weapon placement was everything. You can't cover a full 360 degrees with a single gun, but fortunately this is America and current problems are easily solved with the same old solutions.
Guns.
Yes.
Lots of guns.
I said
cool.
already.
Sounds simple enough, right? So what guns do you think they went with? Well, the original standard loadout included 1 or 2 M60s, aka the Pig. Now these are great for laying down some suppressive fire when you need a little bit of relief, but what do you do when you need a little more, let's call it persuasion? Alright, tactically acquired, so this one's for 100 points. How do you take out an enemy behind cover? Do you...
Okay. Let's see. How do you take out an enemy behind cover? Call higher command and wait for the generals. Wait for the general to staff it. No. No. If you want to be dead, send a strongly worded letter. Again, no. Mag dump 5.56 and hope for the best. So 3 shades of how you want to die? I'm gonna go with D. Summon black powder Jesus. Yeah. D, final answer.
Do A, call higher command and wait for the general to staff it? Do you B, send a strongly worded letter? Do you C, mag dump 556 and hope for the best? Or do you D, summon black powder Jesus? Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with a good mag dump, but I think I'm gonna go with D. Is that your final answer? Final answer. D is correct. Yes. Yeah, we're gonna go with option D, as in JMB is gonna drag these nuts across the battlefield. John Moses Browning is basically America's architect of ammo-assisted ass whoopings, and his Browning M2 goes back to the early 1900s, and it's still in service today. And the gun truck boys absolutely love
Hurt. Not flipping anyone off. Hurt this finger while carrying the barrel out of our truck after the gunner handed it to me. Smashed it right against the metal of the truck. Wasn't happy for about 3 months, but I could have lost the finger.
of them some M2 action, because while an M60 might pepper a tree, with an M2 you can just delete the tree. Really, about the only problem with using the M2 is that they weren't authorized to have them, which normally would be a problem for everybody else, but as the old saying goes, necessity is the mother of innovation, so with that, the crews got creative.
We just go there every day, do the work, gain their trust until we get them in the palm of our hand.
These guys would scrounge 50s however they could. They'd find them in vehicle graveyards, they'd trade for them, or more.
Why me? I don't know if that's referring to the gun or the gunner.
Commonly, they would collect a bunch of broken 50 parts, bring them into
or whoever they're going to take out.
Supply, and then do a direct exchange for a fully functional gun. Guys, what I just said is that they solved their procurement problem by turning in junk and walking out with a fully functional 50 by doing a warranty claim.
Hey man, how you doing there? You guys got bow and arrows?
Sir, whatever you're planning on doing, please don't do it.
I'm not doing anything.
That said, for gun truckers, this was a slow and tedious process, so it was often much more efficient to just tactically acquire as much as they thought they needed. And apparently some of the crews figured that the appropriate amount of 50s was all of them, with some trucks like Devil Woman mounting a total of 5 for complete JMB coverage. And the 50 caliber shenanigans didn't just stop at phantom procurement methods, because they even had tricks for their ammo loadout. Crews would often treat their ammo belts like an all-you-could-eat buffet. They would do a mix of 2 armor-piercing incendiary, 2 incendiary, then a tracer round in that order. So if you were on the receiving end of a pissed-off...
You always need a tracer round, just make sure everything's going where it needs to.
18-year-old in the back of a DIY armored hate wagon, well, what you were going to see was a stream of red laser beams flying your direction, followed immediately by explosions and things catching on fire that you didn't even know could catch fire.
Now show 'em your badge.
Now, as legendarily lethal as the 50 was, what every crew really wanted was the M134 minigun. Taking a weapon normally used on helicopters and slapping it on a truck was absolutely disrespectful. It messed with the enemy both emotionally and, as you'd imagine, physically. And as one gun trucker put it, quote, "A 50 caliber is an awesome weapon, but a minigun, well, that's special right there." And of course, like everything else, they didn't officially issue miniguns to gun truck crews, so the crews got creative. And by creative, I mean they stole them. They stole miniguns. And you don't have to take my word for it. One guy just straight up said, quote, "We stole stuff all the time. We stole miniguns." But sourcing a minigun is only half the equation, because the other half is electricity. Again, for a determined truck driver, not a problem. They would just acquire a generator, rig it up, and now, instant minigun power. But what if that wasn't an option? Well, one truck named Pure Hell managed to source a minigun without its electric motor, so they built a hand crank mechanism for it instead. I don't know if you fully understand what I just said, so let me put it another way. These guys built a 19th century Gatling gun in the 20th century and were literally cranking out 7.62 Freedom Seeds by hand.
Fuck yeah!
Anyway, the point I'm trying to get at is that every gun truck wanted at least one minigun and a 50. But then you had ones like Poison Ivy. No, not that one. You know I love me some white girls, but not that one either. Yep, that one. Poison Ivy took minigun into absolute absurd levels with 4 miniguns.
I could see DC's Poison Ivy on that truck, you know, spreading those freedom seeds.
And a twin 50 mount. There were a ton of deadly gun truck configurations out there, but this one is easily top tier. This thing was basically a mini gunship on wheels. But big badass belt feds weren't the only thing that they carried, because sometimes when the fight got up close and personal, well, that's when crews would grab their ditch guns. This could be anything from M79 Thumper, shotguns, M16s, M14s, you name it, they had it. Hell, they even had World War II era gems like M3 grease guns, Thompsons, and even BARs. Now, were these guns part of their standard loadout? No, absolutely not. So where did they get them from? That's a damn good question, and one the brass didn't.
Found them. You know, on the side of the road, next to somebody who didn't need it anymore. Found them.
Pry into too much, because deep down they understood the truth of it, in that if it works, well, stop asking.
I don't know shit about fuck.
And speaking of brass, gun truckers had a very simple philosophy when it came to ammo. Bring all of it. Some of these trucks carried so much ammo that cases covered the entire bed floor. And when they ran out of floor space, they would weld up extra racks to the outside of the truck, or they would just pile it on top of the cab roof. This is beyond carrying extra ammo. This is we're starting a small business called Assassins R Us, and we're stocking inventory. In addition to their arsenal, one of the biggest improvements that they made was to their comms. Now, early on, the lack of radios meant coordinating or calling in for air support was damn near impossible. But pretty soon, all the trucks had some form of a radio, anything from a man pack to outright liberating an entire intercom system and CVC helmets from unsuspecting tank crews. It should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, the gun truck concept was a hit. And not only that, the men on board began to develop a unique culture around their trucks. A mix of pride, defiance, and dark humor gave rise to one of the most famous parts of this entire story, the truck names. Now, as you'd imagine, the brass wasn't exactly thrilled about dudes painting giant names on army vehicles, but Lieutenant Colonel John Burke, well, he sees them doing it, runs across one named Burke's Law, he thinks it's hilarious, and he just lets them keep doing it. And that's all she wrote, you guys. If you can make your CEO laugh by default, that means he's okay with it, so now it's game on. The names varied wildly, always towing the line between badass to out.
Let's go back.
Now it's game on. The names varied.
The VC birth control. The pill. The pill being the round.
Wildly, always towing the line between badass to outright bizarre. But occasionally a crew would push it just a little too far, and even the brass.
I miss that humor. That's all I'm gonna say.
Had to step in like, ho, all right, man, listen, I know what you're getting at here, but Nixon's hired assassins is a little too on the nose, don't you think? So they shortened it to just assassins. And these guys push the boundaries on everything, including the paint. And I don't mean the paint that they use to write the names on, I mean the literal color of the truck. Their OGCO originally insisted that the truck stay low-key OD green so that they wouldn't stand out in a convoy. In other words, he wanted them to blend in and don't draw attention to themselves. Which is quite literally the exact opposite of what these guys wanted. They wanted their trucks to stand out. They wanted to intimidate the enemy. They wanted them to know that they were coming, so that instead, they started painting them jet black. But since this was against the orders, they would mix a little OD green in it so they could say, well, sir, technically, it's got green in it. And as soon as that CO left country, all the subtlety died with it, and immediately the glossy black paint jobs came out in full force. Now, while it might look like these guys may have had a few screws loose, they were actually some of the most elite of the elite within the Transportation Corps. Nobody was assigned to do this job. They were all volunteers. And they wouldn't even just take anyone. You had to prove yourself. You had to know the roads by heart. You had to be tactically sound. You had to be aggressive, a team player. And most importantly, you always had to be ready to throw down. These guys would never turn down a mission. Some of them would even turn down R&R because they understood what was at stake if they left their brothers behind. This sheepdog mentality was ingrained in them, and few of them represented that more than Larry Dahl. Fast forward a bit to February 23rd, 1971, and once again, the gun trucks have got a mission. On today's mission, they're escorting fuel, and they're headed west towards Pleiku. The convoy is split into two serials, and both of them are packing some serious heavy hitters. In the first serial, we've got gun trucks Creeper, the Boss, and Playboys, and in the second one, we've got the Misfits, Brutus the Untouchable, and a gun jeep called Little Brutus. And to give you an idea of how far these trucks have come by 1971, each of them has a basic loadout of about 8,000 rounds of .50 caliber. And if you do the math on that, that means that their
That was a cute
basic
dog.
load is somewhere in the ballpark of 2,500 pounds of ammo. Guys, that is over a ton of ammo just sitting in the back like it's standard procedure. But everyone keeps forgetting that this is America and moderation is for the weak, so for most of them, they went much heavier, with 2 layers of 100-round ammo cans lining the entire truck bed. Now, even after you account for the gun box footprint that takes up room of that bed, we're still somewhere in the ballpark between 22,000 and 30,000 rounds of ammo in a single truck. What is that weight-wise? Like somewhere between 7,000 and 9,500 pounds of ammo in cans alone? Guys, that is 3.5 to almost 5 tons of ammo before you even count the gun box steel, the guns, the crews, water, spare barrels, any of it. These trucks were rated for 5 tons and they were hilariously over their rated limit by ammo alone. Now, do you think any of these guys gave a single shit about overloading these trucks?
Nope.
Yeah, exactly. And Creeper, the lead truck, is a perfect example about how far this concept has truly evolved. Creeper has 4 50s mounted on all 4 corners, twin 50s on the cab, extra weapons on hand, extra 50s in the back, like not barrels, like the whole gun. They had extra 50s just in case 50s in the back. And they also had extra M60s, Thompsons, and even the driver was strapped up, riding shotgun with an M79 grenade launcher and a modified 55-gallon drum loaded with loose 40 mic rounds.
Would you please remove any metallic items you're carrying? Keys, loose change? Holy shit.
Pulling up the rear of the serial were 2 other notorious trucks called the Untouchable and Brutus. The Untouchable earned its namesake from its crew's ridiculously high standards and its hilarious armament of twin 50s and twin M134 miniguns. And those miniguns were, of course, tactically acquired through various nefarious means of procurement. No need to talk about that. But then, of course, we have Brutus. Now, when it comes to Brutus, this truck was so hated by the NBA that there was basically a bounty on it at all times. And unfortunately, this had the side effect of Brutus was rolling around today with what amounts to be its 3rd crew in only a few months because the enemy was constantly trying to cash in on that bounty. At about 10:45, Creepers in the
Viet Cong probably saying et tu, Brute. Little Shakespeare humor.
lead approaching a bridge when the crew spots what they think are some ARVN up ahead. And for a split second, everything looks routine until all of a sudden, it wasn't. The figures raise their weapons and open fire, and immediately it becomes clear that this is not friendly. The whole jungle erupts with machine gun fire, with initial estimates putting it at something like an NBA battalion-sized ambush sitting in that wood line, and Creeper is right at the front edge of it. Creeper opens up with its 50s, and a tank across the bridge decides to join in, throwing its main gun fire directly into that tree line. The second truck, the boss, then pushes up ahead to help Creeper to hold this line. Creeper then takes an RPG hit to the front, and while all of this is happening, Playboys, the last gun truck in that first serial, is forcing its way into the kill zone, and then it also takes a rocket, this time to the cab. They call in for air support, and they return as much fire as they can downrange. They're holding this thing down for over 15 straight minutes, to the point that their barrels are getting so hot that they're having to pour oil on them just to keep the guns running, because the barrels are now glowing cherry red. The Cobras finally arrive and start tearing up the tree line, but it doesn't end the fight, it merely slows it down. The ambush didn't check up a bit, and for 30 minutes they fought them off until they could finally get some relief, as they could hear Brutus and his miniguns just putting in work behind them. The second serial clears the bend, and finally, all 7 gun trucks, over 21 machine guns in total, and a tank were just laying the hands on the enemy.
All tanks, start squirting that tree line. Let's light them up. Let's go. Let's clean it up.
Eventually, all the firing starts to slack off, a ceasefire is called, and the guys dismount. They begin assessing their battle damage, and they set out to make a plan. Well, now that they've got the plan sorted out, Brutus then backs up to turn around when suddenly, out of the corner of their eye, they see 5 enemy soldiers charging directly towards Brutus. An NVA soldier made it all the way to the truck and manages to lob a grenade directly into the back of it. Now, both the gunners Diaz and Dahl saw this grenade hit the truck bed, and the exact same thought ran through their minds. You gotta understand, you guys, the crews of these trucks developed a bond stronger than blood, and both Diaz and Dahl were ready to give their lives to save a brother, but it just so happened to be that Dahl, well, he saw that grenade first. When all was said and done, it became clear that the enemy weren't just trying to torch fuel trucks, but they were specifically targeting those gun trucks. They were effectively trying to kill the teeth of the convoy first. And with all these bounties floating around, Brutus may have been the biggest target of all of them. Now, most convoy ambushes last mere minutes, but this one goes down as one of the longest and most intense fights in gun truck history. Now, plenty of awards come out of it, but the standout has to be Larry Dahl, who received the Medal of Honor, albeit posthumously. After Larry Dahl, the gun trucks don't become an overnight legend, they just keep doing the job. They're still escorting convoys right up until the end when the last transport units finally leave Vietnam in 1972. And then the war just kinda ends and the trucks disappear. Unfortunately, most of them get stripped down, they get scrapped, cannibalized, turned back into normal cargo trucks because far be it from the army to try to preserve something that it never wanted to admit that it needed in the first place. There was, however, one exception. One original gun truck got shipped back home, and that was Eve of Destruction. This is just wild to think about because these weren't just trucks. These things were rolling proof that the enemy can target whoever they want, and the people who are getting targeted, well, they're the ones who can adapt faster than the brass upstairs can. And that was that. We do what we always do. We move on, we refocus, we forget. And then history loads the same round in the chamber again, albeit this time 30 years later. Now fast forward a bit and we find ourselves in a new fight, this time in Iraq. And convoys start getting hit hard, truck drivers are getting targeted, the casualties climb, and do you see a pattern here? The same story repeats itself over again, to include there's that one guy who just stands up and says, you know what? Enough is enough. Now that somebody was Lieutenant James McCormick, and he links up with Larry Fient. Now Larry was a Vietnam gun trucker, and to me this has got to be the coolest part of this entire story. Because here's the thing, Vietnam gun truckers could have just faded away into a well-deserved retirement, but they just did not do that at all. They came back and they helped the next generation to learn how to fight and to survive their war. They passed down their tactics, they helped them to improve their mindset, they built lessons, hell, they even got their hands dirty to improve systems like their Hunter box. And this is when you realize that this is no longer just some crazy Vietnam story. This is a straight line from QL-19 now to the roads of Iraq. This is a full circle moment. It's the same mission but a different war. It's still brothers in arms fighting to preserve the freedoms that we all get to enjoy. This is why history matters, you guys, and this time, fortunately, the US Army remembered to write it down. Guys, I appreciate y'all watching, and I've wanted to make this video since the very beginning of this channel. It's taken me this long to finally get this story right. I hope I did these guys justice. I've got another video coming after this specifically about Eve of Destruction, and you know what? If you want to support this channel, what we're doing here, then again, head over to tangoalpha.store. I'm gonna go work on the next video. Out.
For me, being here with you now and knowing you all these years and affectionately referring you to as old dad, you know,
I'm on.
I love you, man. And I love you guys for what you've done then and what you did. We would have lost a lot of people. Larry has been that one that I could call on the phone and talk to him. That relationship's very special, you know. I love him. I mean, there's no other way I can say that. I love him.
So my final thoughts. Tactically Acquired, awesome, new channel. Thanks for recommendation from one of my viewers. I'm going to definitely react to other videos of his along with the Fat Electrician Nick. This story kind of get close to home because I served in the U.S. Navy with the Marines. We were in Iraq in 2007 and 8, and I did convoy security. So seeing this story and seeing kind of the forefathers of it, you know, the things that they did that became our SOP, and we, of course, unfortunately had to learn the hard way again instead of improving and keep on going. You know, the ones in Desert Storm, and then, of course, Operation Iraqi Freedom and all that. That being said, great video. I hope you guys liked it. If you keep liking, of course, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe. Definitely subscribe to Tactically Acquired. I am after this, and support his channel as well. With that being said, take care of yourselves. Stay kind, and I'll see you soon.